So we don't know how many people are behind it, because here's the other aspect of Bitcoin. It was created with pseudo-anonymous features in mind. So by definition, account holders' identity are not strongly tied to the account, to the address. So when you see a Bitcoin address being advertised, or even if I give you one, there's no way to prove that this is my account. Or sorry, there's no way for you to discern who owns that account. However, if I truly own the account, I could prove it to you mathematically using cryptography. So that's a nuance there.
Because I'd like to talk a little bit about the anonymous aspects of Bitcoin, because it sounds from an outsider's perspective that this means that it would be just a brilliant opportunity for money launderers and tax evaders to get their hands on Bitcoin and to squirrel away a lot of funds behind the authorities' back. And it does seem to be that that's the perception a lot of people have of Bitcoin,
Indeed.
that is what it's associated with. So, I mean, is that not the case? Can people not easily do that if there is that?
Indeed.
Right.
There is, to be honest, I think I will admit, and I've seen, there is criminal activity behind Bitcoin. There are criminals who have used Bitcoin for illegal purposes, whether they're laundering money or hiding, tax evasion and so on and so forth, right? Just like now I say that being genuine and truthful. But the reality is the same can be said about cash, the same can be said about the internet. Right? There's criminal activity on the internet. But it doesn't mean the internet is bad. There are criminals using cash. Cash is stolen. People use cash to launder money. So if you're from the UK, the sterling pound is constantly used by criminals and mafia organizations. But it doesn't make the sterling pound cash, whether it's the coin or the paper, no, it doesn't make that itself bad.
No, it doesn't, but I think the idea would be, just because the cash has the opportunity to be used in that way, surely the idea would be to improve upon that. And
yes.
if the option is there, the possibility is there to stop that happening, as we've seen with credit cards and conventional finance, and you have the ability to put this regulation and this oversight in
yes.
place, then surely you would want to take that opportunity.
Yes.
And cash as well, you do need to physically take cash to places to have that transaction.
That's right.
You can be seen by people, there's CCTV,
That's right.
There are witnesses, whereas this, you can do all sorts of things online.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you want that oversight, don't you?
Yeah, it comes back to me, it comes back to liberty and freedom, in the sense that Bitcoin was created by an inventor, and it was let out there, and the fact that people use it today is their free will. There's no one forcing anyone to use Bitcoin. So on the other hand, in an ideal world, in a utopian society, we would get rid of anything that creates and causes more crime. If cash allows for and creates more crime, we would get rid of it. But then the question is, do you want to live in a government, in a system of government, where the government tells you you're no longer allowed to use cash, you're only allowed to use credit card and other forms of traceable payments? Would you want to live in such a society? Because I know libertarians don't want to be oppressed and live in that society. They want to have the freedom to do their own thing, to own their own assets, to have their own cash, to spend it how they want. Whereas even you today, I believe you're still allowed to use cash in the UK.
That is correct,
right?
Yes.
And we know cash contributes to crime and money laundering and so on. So if one day, if the UK Parliament passes a law that says cash is now illegal, you have to turn it in. Would you like that or not?
Well, no, well, obviously that would be inconvenient for me. But if it did mean that they were going to catch a lot of people involved in child pornography or money launderers, then perhaps you would weigh it up.
Well, the question is, would the citizens of UK or of Europe or of the Earth, be okay with giving up cash for the sake of catching these criminals?
But you see, I think it's a false argument, because I think cash, you put cash into bank accounts as well.
Yes.
Otherwise you have to physically hoard it somewhere.
Sure.
Now in bank accounts there is oversight, there is regulation.
Sure.
So that's cash that you're putting into a system.
That's why you have a choice. So the point about the cash system today is people have a choice. Some hold cash, like I have some cash in my wallet, but I don't have all my money in cash. Just like you have some cash on hand in your wallet or at home, but you don't have all your money in cash. So for you it's a choice. So that's what it comes down to. Are people allowed, just like you and I, a choice to have some cash, have some money in the bank system? And if that's a fundamental choice that we think we should have, preserve as human beings in a democracy, then we should have the right to have some of our money in Bitcoins. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I suppose I think the cost benefit for trying to trace where all money goes would be impossible because you couldn't put traces on cash. Whereas for something like Bitcoin,
it's actually easier
than
cash.
Well, Bitcoin is easier to trace
than cash. Yes.
So why? I just am confused as to why you wouldn't necessarily want some sort of oversight and regulation if it means that people can be caught doing illegal activities such as child pornography, such as money laundering, such as all these things that have come up with the sort of the Bitcoin history.
I'm not. By the way, I'm not against regulation of Bitcoin. I'm not against it. I'm actually a proponent for regulation for the good purposes like consumer protection, and for reasonable regulation that's not overly cumbersome. Think about how cash is regulated today. There's regulation about cash in the banking sector in society today, and it's not overburdensome. Right? When you go get cash at an ATM, you don't have to scan your fingerprint or provide your passport.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But there are limits to how much cash you can get per day for your own protection and in case someone robs your ATM debit card. For these reasons, I'm in favor of similar types of regulation for Bitcoin. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all regulation for Bitcoin for the whole world, but certainly countries and governments should examine their society and see what makes sense for Bitcoin and for cash.
And would you be happy, perhaps happy is a strong word, but would you find it acceptable if the anonymity aspect of Bitcoin was taken away and that the users of it did have to have some sort of identifier when they use Bitcoin?
Sure, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. But let me tell you another dirty secret. Bitcoin is an open source piece of software, and it was invented 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and it's already out there in the wild. So even if I worked in conjunction with you and the government, let's say of the whole world, even United Nations, and we decide to change the program to remove the anonymity feature of Bitcoin and require every Bitcoin user to register with a passport, even if we did that, we're not going to stamp it out, meaning there's going to be another version of Bitcoin, so-called the old version, that doesn't have this removed. So there'll be the new Bitcoin that's fully registered, people with passports and fingerprints and so on. And there's the old Bitcoin, which is still the one that we know about today, which is the pseudo-anonymous version. And the question is, just because we have the new one, will the old one go away? Right? When MP3 files came along, did it make all the CDs go away or the cassette tapes go away? Right? In the end, it's about what people want. It's their freedom. If we live in a democracy, it's what they want. If we lived in North Korea, you could dictate and say, only this and not that.
Although governments could make it illegal.
They could. They could. Even today, any government, whether it's Japan or England or America, can declare Bitcoin illegal.
And it's interesting that they haven't so far.
It's interesting how, you know why? It's impractical. Because in the end, if you break down to it, Bitcoin is just information. Right? Let's say they declared it illegal. So today, in this legal world, do I admit, yes, I admit I have Bitcoin. I have Bitcoin. Right? If they declared it illegal, you know what I would do? Sorry, I don't have Bitcoin. I don't have Bitcoin. I don't know what Bitcoin, I don't have any Bitcoin. So I'm not breaking the law. But when I say I don't have Bitcoin, no one can prove that I do.
Because the transactions are anonymous as well.
Yeah, because you just can't prove that I don't know something. I know it. Let's say I know the address or I know the secret private key to my Bitcoin address. I just refuse to say it. Are you going to torture me?
But the problem, I suppose, if it was made illegal, is that all the companies that are now signing up to it, and we've seen some really credible big companies, I think Richard Branson has begun accepting it for his Virgin Atlantic flights and all sorts of others, they would stop accepting it, which would drive it more into the black market.
Exactly. So by law, if Bitcoin were illegal, all Bitcoin companies were ceased to exist. I agree with you fully. There would be no, prominent companies even like ours would have to make a decision to either stop doing Bitcoin or shut down the company. I agree with you there. But you know what else is human nature? When there's a demand for something and it becomes declared illegal, it goes into the black market, the underground. And what happens? The value goes up even higher. That's universally true. Whether it's drugs or illegal firearms or anything, even child pornography, things that are illegal, the value is really high. So the day a country declares Bitcoin illegal, I will assure you that in that country or jurisdiction, the price of Bitcoin will skyrocket. And will the government want to see that? Right? You can't stamp it out, so that's a fundamental problem. It's like MP3 files or the digital revolution, the internet. You can't, like digital photography. If Kodak had a way, they would say, oh, let's make digital photographs illegal. Let's protect the film business. But you know what happened. They couldn't make it illegal, first of all. Secondly, if they did, digital cameras were still evolved without Kodak's support. And now Kodak is out of business.